This is lesson 4.2, day 2. We're going to be doing graphing, mostly on a calculator. So if you have your graphing calculator, you're going to want to get that out. I'm also going to show you it on the Desmos, which you can either find at desmos.com or download the Desmos app. So let's start with some factoring. So this first part is going to be difference of two squares. So basically, we have two things that we could do the square root of. So it's what times what. Notice it's a squared and b squared here, and we have one that's a plus and one that's a minus, because if we were to FOIL that out, we'd end up with a minus between them. So in order for us to do difference, aka difference, which is subtraction, of two perfect squares. So there's our two perfect squares. So we do the square root, and we would think about the fact that we would have a 6x and a plus 5, and then we would have a 6x and a minus 5. So those two things, or you could kind of think of it as splitting it up. So square root of x squared is x, so that's our first term, and then the square root of 4 would be 2. Make sure it's one's a plus and one is a minus. So one more for good measure, square root, square root. So you could set up your two parentheses, one is a plus, one is a minus. So your first term that you're square rooting is the first term of both sets of the parentheses. Notice the parentheses look exactly the same. The only difference is one's a plus and one's a minus. So square root of 4a squared is 2a. So a 2a there and a 2a here. And the square root of 1 is 1. So try these last two on your own. Pause the video and check when you're ready. And we should have a 12x minus 5 and a 12x plus 5 for number 3. And for number 4, we should do square root and get 7x plus 6 and 7x minus 6. All right, so let's go ahead and get to our graphing part here. So we're estimating roots, meaning these are not at exact consecutive or exact integers. So they're going to be between two integers, and those are the ones we're going to identify what it's between. So you can either go to Desmos or go to your graphing calculator. Let's go to our graphing calculator. So we're going to hit the y equals button, and we're going to type in our negative x squared plus 4x minus 1. And then we're going to go to the graph. Let me double check and make sure that was our right one here. And yep. Negative x squared plus 4x minus 1. All right, so here it is, second graph to, not second graph, just graph. Get the table. And there it is. All right, so we can see our two zeros. Here's one, and then here's the other. So what is this between? Well, it's between 0 and 1. And then over here, it's between 3 and 4. So that is our answer. So we would put between 0 and 1 and 3 and 4. All right, so let's go ahead and have you try this next one on your own. You can either do it on your graphing calculator or you can go to Desmos. So here is the Desmos. So if you go to desmos.com, you click just the graph button, and then you type in negative x squared. And in order to do the x squared, you're actually going to want to do kind of the little upside down. So if you go negative, well, maybe. No, it's not working for me. There we go. Negative x squared. So you're going to hit the shift number 6, and that will get you up to the squared part, and then just arrow out, and then plus 4x, and then minus 1. And then we can have that same thing, and it actually gives this to us, but we can go see it's between 0 and 1, and over here between 3 and 4. So you are going to try this next one on your own, either using your graphing calculator or Desmos, if you don't have your graphing calculator with you, and get what the two zeros are between the two roots. All right, so let's check. So I'm going to go to Desmos for this one. So x squared plus 7x plus 5 plus 7x plus 5. All right, so you should be between, zoom in a little bit here. Well, it looks like you're between 0 and -1, and over here you're between -6 and -7. So 0 and -1, and 6 and 7. So you're between those two values. All right, let's talk about using a table. So we're going to go to our calculator and we're going to type this in just like we did on the last one. And then we're going to look at the table of values. When we hit that second graph button, we'll get our table. And we are going to look when we see that sign change in the y values. So when we see that happen, that means there is a 0 between those values of x. So let's go ahead and type that into our graphing calculator. X squared plus 5x minus 7. So y equals, and x squared, and I've already forgotten it, 5x minus 7. There we go, 5x minus 7. So we're going to hit second graph this time to get our table. And again, we're going to look for when our y value is, the sign is changing. So if we look here, we can see from 7 and then it goes to a negative. So that's when our sign is changing. And then here again, our sign is changing from a -1 to a +7. So we can see it's between 1 and 2, and up here it's between -7 and -6. So between those x values, so between 1 and 2 and -7 and -6. I think that was right. Let's double check. Between 1 and 2, yep, and between -6 and -7. And there we go. All right, so let's move on to when we want to find the zeros on our graphing calculator. So we would type it, let's go ahead and type this in to our y equals, and then we can either use the table or we can use the trace function until we get to that point. So looking for the zeros on the table, we want to look for, use my highlight here, when it is a 0 for the y, so there's our zeros, or again tracing. So let's go ahead and do that one. Actually, we'll do this one. It looks like we've got some blanks here. Let's take a look at this one. So -x squared minus 2x plus 3. So go to, again, your y equals. And we want to type in -x squared minus 2x plus 3. Okay, so let's go ahead and go to second graph first and just look at our table. And I see a 0 here of -3, and then a 0 here of 1. And then let's go ahead and just hit our graph button and look at our graph. So you can kind of already see them here. You can always go to zoom if it's not graphing and you can't really see it well. Go to zoom 6 and that will kind of make it so you can actually see it. But if we hit that trace button, and then we can kind of trace over until we get to that point. And if we want to look for a 0, then we can go to the second trace button and go to number 2, which is 0, and then we'll go kind of to the left of that and to the right of that. So let's go ahead and try that. So we want to hit second trace and go down to number 2. And we again want to go to the left of this 0. So make sure that you're to the left of it, or pick a number. Type in a number like, we know -1 is to the left of that. Enter. So that's to the left. Now it says pick one to the right. So let's pick 2, because that we know is for sure to the right of that. So 2. Enter. And now we're between, which guess, we don't want to guess. We just want to hit enter. And there's our 0, 1. So the table's sometimes easier to read versus having to go through that left and right bound on each of those. We could just see from the table that our zeros were at -3 and 1. So left looks to be just looking at the zeros, -3, and the right looked to be 1, and we were correct. All right, so step 5 was when we went to the left, and then step 6 was when we went to the right, and we actually found that 0. And then we repeat that same thing to find the other 0, since we can see that there's 2. So if you want to try one on your own, we'll do some more practice in class. But the Desmos is really good with this, even though you can't use it on your test because you'd have to have a phone. But it's really good because you can just click on it and it will tell you the 0. So like if we were to try -x squared minus 2x plus 3 on Desmos, then we could, let's zoom, out a little bit, and we could just click, and there it is, and there it is. So Desmos is really user-friendly. I know there's a lot of buttons on your graphing calculator, but you will need to know where all those buttons are and how to do those things for ACT and SAT and those standardized tests. But we'll do more in class, but definitely practicing with your calculator makes it much better and easier to use the more you practice.